anyone out there? If you can hear me, it means you're still connected. That's a good thing. You're lucky. Or unlucky. I'm not sure which one it is anymore. Let me tell you how it started. It was quiet at first. Too quiet. The kind of silence that makes you look over your shoulder, expecting something to happen. But you don't know what. The world had this odd stillness. The sort of calm you get right before a storm, you know? But there was no storm coming. Not in the way you'd expect. Then it happened. The whole world, just stopped. No warning, no sound. The lights went out first, and then the hum of machines we'd always taken for granted, gone. The air smelled of burning wires and metal, and for a second I thought maybe it was just a power failure. But it wasn't. And then gravity. Gravity disappeared. Just gone. I don't know how else to explain it. 1 minute, everything was normal. The next, people were floating. Buildings crumpled like paper, steel twisting in midair like it was made of nothing. Cars went sailing off the roads, crashing into everything. Oceans? They spilled out, like water from an overturned cup, and I heard people screaming, trying to grab onto anything, just to hold on. But there's nothing to grab. It's just empty space. If you're hearing this, it's because you're somehow still connected to the airwaves. I'm assuming you're holding on, like the rest of us. If not, well, I don't even know what to say. Maybe you're just floating out there, lost to the wind. But if you're here, if you're listening, you're not alone. Not yet. You're probably wondering why this is happening, and I wish I could give you an answer. I wish I knew what went wrong, or what happened to make the Earth lose its grip on us, but that's the thing, I don't know. But what I do know is this. The world isn't what it used to be. Gravity, the thing that keeps us grounded, just isn't there anymore. People are drifting. And when you're drifting, you're powerless, helpless. If you're still able to move, if you're still able to hear my voice, you need to listen closely. I'm going to give you some survival tips. I'm going to tell you what I've seen, what I've learned in the past few hours, in the hope that it can help. But I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's bad, really bad. Some people, they're gone. Others are lost, floating with no way to find their way back down. There are still fires, still buildings falling apart, and every single one of us, everyone, is struggling to make sense of it all. If you're in a city or close to one, get out. The structures won't hold. They can't. Not without gravity. People are starting to gather, but I'm not sure where. Some are looking for shelter in higher places, rooftops, towers. But the higher you go, the less stable it gets. The further you go from the ground, the less likely it is you'll be able to get back. It's already too late for some. I don't know where you are right now, but I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But don't panic. Do not panic. We've got to keep our heads or else, well, I can't promise anything. I'm going to keep talking as long as I can, but I don't know how much time we have. The world is shifting, and we're all just trying to hang on. You're not alone, though. Not yet. So, listen up. There are a few things you need to remember right now. 1, stay calm. It sounds impossible, I know, but if you panic, you'll drift off, and you won't be able to get control. 2, don't try to go up. There's no reason to go higher. Gravity's gone, remember? You're not going to fall the way you think you will. If you're up, you're just going to float. 3, find something heavy. I don't care if it's a backpack full of rocks or a steel pipe. You need weight, something to keep you anchored. It's the only way to stay grounded in this madness. And 4, don't trust the buildings. Don't think you're safe because you're inside. The foundation won't hold. The walls won't hold. The second the weight of the building shifts, it'll fall apart. You'll fall with it. Don't risk it. Now, I'm going to try and keep you updated as I learn more, but we need to get through this together. I don't know what's going on, but we've got to stay connected. Even if we're drifting, even if everything else is falling apart. The world is chaotic right now, but we can't lose hope. We've got a lot to figure out: how to survive, how to find each other, how to restore balance to this broken world. But we will. We have to. And we will figure this out. Stay with me. Okay. If you're still with me, it means you're hanging on, and that's good. I'm not sure if it's hope I'm feeling or just sheer panic, but I'll take it. It's all we have left, right? I've been trying to piece this together, talking to anyone I can reach. But the truth is, not much is making sense anymore. People are everywhere, floating, drifting, trying to hold on to whatever they can find. Some of them are holding on to debris, while others are clinging to each other like lifelines. It's chaos, pure chaos, but that's not the worst part. The worst part? People are starting to forget what it means to be grounded. Not just physically, but mentally. You wouldn't believe the things I've heard, the things I've seen. Take Maria, for example. She's a nurse down in Florida. I was talking to her earlier, before everything went dead silent. She said the first few minutes were surreal. People started floating. And at first they didn't know what was going on. You know, it's like when you're dreaming and you think something weird is happening, but you're not sure if you're awake or still asleep. That's how they felt. Maria told me there was a woman, pregnant, who was rushed into the hospital the minute gravity stopped. The doctors were scrambling, trying to stabilize her. But once she started floating, it was over. Maria said she could only watch, helpless. The whole world became disoriented. There was no way to hold on to anything, to anyone. It's not just physical, it's psychological. Everyone is losing their grip on what's real. Listen, if you're near a hospital or anywhere where people are trying to help, get out. I know you might think you'll be safe there, but there's no safety in a world where nothing is rooted to the earth anymore. Hospitals can't save you if everything starts floating away. Trust me on that. We're all trying to stay in control, but as time passes, it's like gravity wasn't just taken from us. It's like our minds are losing their own pull too. People are forgetting the most basic things. Basic survival instincts. They're starting to fade. It's almost like we've been unmoored, not just from the ground, but from our humanity. I've heard people yelling at each other, angry, confused, lost. The kind of anger you get when you feel betrayed by the world itself. I get it though. It's like there's no center anymore, no base. People just snap. You see, when you're floating, when there's nothing to hold on to, you start to lose sense of who you are, where you belong, what to do next. It's like being lost in the dark, but the dark is everywhere, and you can't escape it. Then there are those who can't accept it. They're out there right now, clinging to the hope that things will go back to normal, that gravity will return like flipping a light switch. I wish I could say I believe that too, but I don't think we're going back to normal anytime soon. People are floating away, and not just physically, mentally too. Some of them are trying to organize, set up signals, ways to communicate, but it's hard to know if it's even worth it. How do you find someone when you can't even keep yourself tethered to the ground? How do you rebuild when nothing stays put? I talked to an older man last night. He said the worst part wasn't losing control. It was seeing others give up. I didn't think much of it at first, but he was right. You can see it in their eyes. That hopelessness. People who are losing themselves. People who just drift into nothing. I don't want you to lose hope. I really don't. Because out there are people still fighting, still trying to keep something real, something tangible. There are still communities forming. Groups of people are finding each other, coming together to make sure they stay anchored. But it's not easy. If you can hear me, and you're still somewhere that's stable, If you have a piece of solid ground beneath you, or a safe place you can tie yourself to, don't leave it. Hold on. The chaos outside is getting worse by the minute. Some places are starting to collapse completely. You may think you're safe inside a building, but the truth is, nothing's safe. Not anymore. Not unless you're grounded. And don't get me started on what's happening outside the cities. The ones who didn't make it to shelter. They're floating in the wind, helpless. It's a nightmare, like a bad dream you can't wake up from. But it's real. This is real. I don't know how long we've got before the rest of the world starts to crack. But whatever happens next, I need you to stay sharp. I need you to stay connected. This isn't the time for fear, it's the time for action. Right now, we're still fighting to survive. If you're still out there, hanging on to whatever you can find, you're probably starting to realize the full scale of this. This isn't just about losing gravity. No, this is much bigger than that. And it's only getting worse. You can feel it, can't you? The world's balance, if it ever had one, is gone. Every second I hear something else breaking. The world we knew is splintering. It's all falling apart, and it's happening fast. Things are, slipping through our fingers. I mean, think about it. What happens when gravity disappears? It's not just the buildings that collapse. It's everything. It's our systems, our order, our very way of living. No one was prepared for this. No one. It's like someone turned off the switch on our world, and now we're scrambling to figure out how to turn it back on. Just this morning, I spoke to someone in London. The streets are empty. No cars, no buses, just debris floating everywhere. The landmarks? Gone. Buildings in midair, shattered glass drifting down like rain. People? Some are still trying to cling to their homes. Others, they're just floating, aimless. I can hear the desperation in their voices when they call in. They're asking about the government, about whether anyone's coming to save them. But I don't know how to answer. Governments? Agencies? None of them have any answers. They've gone silent too. Some of the bigger cities are trying to organize. You've got these groups gathering at whatever makeshift shelters they can find, but there's a problem. In places like New York, Paris, Tokyo, they're crowded. People packed together in floating rooms and structures trying to keep it together, but those places are barely holding. And the worst part? There's no way to reach them. No way to even get a message across. If you're in one of those cities, just get out. It sounds crazy, right? Like, how could you possibly leave a place like that when the entire world's upside down? But trust me, if you're near the big hubs, it's only a matter of time before the rest of the buildings start going down. They can't stand like this. I heard someone talking about the golden hour. You know, the time right after an earthquake, when the dust hasn't fully settled. Well, this is our golden hour. There's still a time to figure out what to do next, if we act fast enough. But as we're seeing, it's not going to last forever. If we don't get organized soon, things will devolve into total chaos. The airwaves are full of distress calls from all over. There's no clear leader, no unified plan. People are still clinging to hope, just still talking about restoring order. But let's face it, order, it's an abstract concept in a world where nothing stays where it's supposed to. People are getting restless. They're starting to lose trust. And when that happens, that's when the real danger sets in. I don't know what's happening at the top levels, but the governments, they're failing. The ones who tried to step in, they're gone. Their systems crumbled with everything else. I heard the U.S. military tried to deploy some sort of rescue team, but their planes, if they even made it into the air, couldn't stabilize. They couldn't land because the ground wasn't stable enough to hold them. That's when you know we've reached a new low. You're probably wondering what the point of all this is. Well, here it is. We've got no one to count on but ourselves now. The help isn't coming, at least not in the way we thought it would. What's left is what we can do right now, in the here and now. Find the people who can keep things together. Those small groups, those pockets of survivors. That's where the real action is happening. I know it sounds bleak, but there's a reason to hold on. Because the more I hear from people out there, the more I hear from those who are working together to survive, the more I realize humanity's not done yet. Not by a long shot. Sure, we've been knocked off our feet, but we're still standing, still trying to hold it together. And let me tell you something I heard from someone in South America, in a small town in the Andes. A group of people, cut off from the rest of the world, managed to create makeshift shelters. They've built up food supplies, gathered everything they could find, and now they're adapting. They're not just trying to survive, they're figuring out how to live in a world without gravity. Now, that's something you don't hear often, right? People adapting, people refusing to just drift away. But that's what we need. Adaptability, creativity, and maybe, just maybe, we can start rebuilding what we've lost. So here's the message I want to leave with you right now. It's time to adapt. Forget the old world. Forget what we knew before. That world is gone. The one we have now is up to us to rebuild, and we've got to do it before everything turns to dust. But we need to talk about something that's been creeping in with the chaos, the mental toll this whole thing is taking on us. We've been talking about the physical survival, about floating, about finding a way to keep things together when nothing stays still. But I've been hearing something else, something that's harder to address. It's the psychological side of this catastrophe, the stuff that's harder to see, but it's just as dangerous. I'm talking about what happens to the mind when everything that gives you a sense of stability is ripped away, when the ground beneath you is gone, and the rules of the world that you've known no longer apply. It starts small. At first, it's just confusion. You're floating, sure, but you think, okay, this is temporary. This is a freak thing, and it'll be over soon. But when the days go by, and it doesn't go away, that's when the panic sets in. People are starting to break. I've heard calls from places where people are losing it, just losing themselves. You wouldn't believe the desperation. You wouldn't believe how fast the mental strain can turn into total collapse. Take Mark from Seattle. He's been holed up in his apartment for days, trying to make sense of it all. He said at first it was all about survival, but after a while he started feeling like, what's the point? It's like gravity's absence doesn't just take you off the ground physically, it starts pulling you away from everything else, from your mind, from your will to keep going. Mark told me, and I quote, "It's like we're all just drifting, and the longer this goes on, the more it feels like we're not supposed to land again." Think about that for a second. Not supposed to land, not supposed to have a sense of direction, not supposed to find solid ground ever again. I've talked to people who've seen the signs, and I'm not just talking about floating debris. I'm talking about the way people's eyes glaze over, the exhaustion, the fear, the way they talk about when the world ends, not if. There's a real shift happening in people's psyches. It's like the very essence of what keeps us grounded mentally has been unmoored, along with everything else. It's hard to even focus anymore. Even the simplest tasks feel overwhelming. I mean, how do you stay mentally sharp when you can't even walk? When you can't even move without worrying about floating off into space? But here's the thing. We've got to acknowledge it. We've got to talk about it. If we're going to make it through this together, we have to face the fact that the psychological damage is just as real as the physical one. People are losing sleep. They're hallucinating. Not just from lack of food, but from the weight of it all, the isolation, the constant sense of drifting. I've heard of some who've started to question everything they know. Is this real? Are we really just floating out here? Or is this some collective madness? Some people are so far gone, they've stopped caring. The anxiety, the dread, It becomes so heavy, it stops people from doing what they need to do to survive. But I don't want to leave you with just that. There is a way through this. I've heard from a few survivors who are trying something that seems to be helping. They're keeping routines. I know, it sounds odd, right? How do you keep a routine when the world's upside down? But listen, having something familiar, something consistent, helps, even in this madness. I talked to a woman in Toronto. Her name's Alice. She's been trying to keep her family grounded by sticking to some form of normalcy. Every day, they get up, get dressed, and do something active. She said that even when they're floating around the house, they'll still make sure to eat at the same time, make sure to check on each other, talk through what's happening. She says it gives them some stability. It's something to hold on to. Now, I'm not saying it's easy. Believe me, I know. But if you've got people you can hold on to, if you can keep a semblance of routine, it's like giving your brain something to cling to. It's a mental anchor, just like how we're trying to anchor ourselves physically. I know what you're thinking. It sounds small, right? But when the world is spinning around you and nothing feels real, sometimes those small routines are the only things that stop you from floating away yourself. And this is something you need to hear. If you're struggling, if you're starting to feel like everything's just too much to bear, you're not alone. There are others feeling the same way. It's okay to reach out. It's okay to ask for help. If you're listening to this, there's still time. You're still here. But don't ignore what's happening in your mind. The moment we start to let go mentally, the rest will follow. And right now, we need every ounce of strength we can muster, even if that strength is just holding onto small, consistent actions that remind you you're still here. You're still fighting. I'm going to tell you something that might sound strange, but don't just survive. Try to live. In whatever way you can. Find something to focus on that isn't just about staying alive. It could be something as simple as taking care of someone else, trying to build something small with whatever you can find. But don't let the mind drift too. You need that stability. We don't know what's coming next. We don't know if this is just the beginning or if we're nearing the end. But I do know one thing. We won't make it if we fall apart in our heads. We need to hold it together, and we need to help each other do the same. All right, we've talked a lot about the chaos, the fear, the isolation, but here's something I want to emphasize right now. There's hope. It's not all bad out there. No, really. There are pockets of survivors pulling together, people who haven't given up yet. I know. It's easy to lose sight of the good in all this madness. You look around, and all you see are people floating aimlessly, buildings collapsing, entire cities unrecognizable. But even in the worst of it, there are sparks of something human. People are finding ways to survive. Not just survive, but to help each other, to keep fighting, to rebuild what's been lost. Take that group in the Midwest, for instance. In a small town somewhere in Nebraska, a group of families has started pooling resources. They found an old warehouse, and they've managed to secure it as a shelter. They're using whatever they can, makeshift ropes, old machinery, to keep it from floating away. And you know what? They're thriving. They figured out how to grow food using a combination of sunlight and candlelight. I know it sounds crazy, but it's working. They've created a little garden inside the warehouse. It's not much, but it's keeping them alive. And that's what counts. People in rural areas like this, they're getting creative. They're building small greenhouses out of scrap materials. They're using the materials they can find to make shelter to find a way to keep moving forward. They're working with what they've got, not waiting for something miraculous to happen. They're making miracles on their own. And then there's a group in a part of Oregon, a place that's mostly untouched by the larger cities. I spoke to a woman there who's helping a group of survivors set up a sort of floating town. They're using what's left of their homes to create little safe zones, each connected by ropes and floating platforms. They're keeping it simple, no fancy tech, no grand plans, but they've got food, water, and the most important thing right now, each other. They're living, breathing proof that if we stick together, we can get through this. If there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that the human spirit isn't as fragile as we think. People are resilient, and where there's a will, there's a way. I've heard about other smaller communities too. A group of teachers in Denver set up a system to keep their kids engaged. They're doing lessons in floating classrooms. Not much space, sure, but it's something. It's structure, it's routine. It's a lifeline for those kids and for the teachers. Just because the world has turned upside down doesn't mean we can't find ways to hold on to what's important. And here's the kicker. It's not just the adults, it's the kids too. Yeah, I'm talking about the young ones. There's this group of kids in New York who've started helping their parents and neighbors scavenging food and supplies, building little shelters with whatever they can find. I heard one of them say, "We've got this. We just need to hold on." If that's not hope, I don't know what is. Sometimes it's the smallest victories that keep us going. A little bit of food when you're hungry. A safe place to sleep when the world feels like it's falling apart. A group of people pulling together instead of tearing each other down. It's these small moments of success that remind us we're still capable of something good. But don't get me wrong, it's not all easy. There's still plenty of danger. We're still facing unknowns. There are places out there where the community is breaking down, where people are losing hope, where desperation is turning to violence. But even in those places, there are people fighting to stop it. People trying to keep things civil, trying to keep things human. And this is where you come in. Wherever you are, whatever your situation, you've got something to contribute. I know it feels like you're alone. I know it feels like everything's out of control. But even if you're just one person, your actions matter. If you're close to others, reach out. Offer what you can. Even if you don't have a lot, a little bit can go a long way. Sometimes just a conversation is enough to remind someone that they're not forgotten. Remember those groups I told you about earlier? They didn't just find each other. They built each other up. People are organizing, pooling their resources, sharing their skills. I talked to a man from a group in Texas who said he never thought he'd see the day when people would come together like this. And you know what? He's right. In a time when everything's falling apart, we're building something new. Maybe not perfect, but something real. So here's what I want you to think about. How can you help? What can you do in your own community? Even the smallest efforts can have a huge ripple effect. Whether it's food, information, or just offering support, every little bit counts right now. We might not have the world we used to have, but the one thing we still have is each other. And if we keep sticking together, if we keep finding ways to support one another, we can rebuild. We can keep pushing forward. It's up to us. All right, I know we've been focused a lot on survival, community, and the emotional toll this is all taking on us. But let's talk about what's really going on. At least, what we think is going on. And the theories some of the experts are throwing around. It's hard to explain, but there are some folks out there, scientists, physicists, trying to make sense of this gravity loss. I'm not going to pretend to understand all the science myself, but from what I've heard, there are a few theories out there that could offer a glimmer of hope. One of the most talked about theories is this idea of gravity anomalies. Some are suggesting that whatever caused this event is linked to a massive shift in the Earth's core. Some kind of disturbance, maybe related to magnetic fields, or even something to do with the fabric of space-time itself. Now, that's way over my head, but it's the explanation I'm hearing most often from the scientists trying to find answers. They say it's possible that what we're dealing with isn't a permanent loss of gravity, but rather a temporary one, a global anomaly that's throwing things off balance. They're not saying it's going to fix itself overnight, but there's hope that it could stabilize eventually. And there's another theory, less scientific but still interesting, that suggests the loss of gravity is some kind of reaction to an imbalance in the planet's energy. Think about it. We've been burning fossil fuels for centuries, polluting the atmosphere, and in doing so, we've been interfering with the natural cycles of the planet. Some say the Earth, in some strange cosmic way, is trying to restore balance. Maybe it sounds far-fetched, but here's the thing. No one really knows. No one can say definitively what's caused this or how to fix it. All we can do is try and understand it. And maybe, just maybe, there's a solution out there that's more within our reach than we think. Some of the more hopeful voices out there are looking at the idea of restoring gravitational pull by manipulating the energy fields around the planet. A few scientists in isolated facilities are testing electromagnetic pulses, trying to send signals into the atmosphere to see if they can trigger some sort of response from whatever's causing the anomaly. But don't get your hopes up just yet. The truth is, nobody really knows how this stuff works. But they're trying. And that counts for something, right? Then there's the less conventional approach, something I heard from a researcher in India. They're studying ancient texts, looking for any mention of gravity disruptions in the past. Now, this might sound crazy, but they believe that our ancestors might have had knowledge of phenomena like this. Maybe they found a way to harness gravitational forces or communicate with the Earth in ways that modern science has forgotten. People have been digging into history, into old records, and they're finding references to floating cities and strange events where gravity was altered. Of course, these are mostly myths, but what if there's a kernel of truth buried in there? What if they knew something we don't? Who knows? Maybe ancient solutions might be the key to fixing what's broken today. And while all of this sounds great in theory, it's the practical side of things we need to focus on right now. You're probably wondering, what can we do right now to survive while everyone's out there theorizing and experimenting? Well, honestly, we need to keep surviving. Focus on the here and now. Right now, there are no magic solutions. There are no quick fixes to make gravity come back. All we have is what we can control. We still need to work together to keep our communities strong, to hold on to what's left of the Earth. It might seem like a waiting game right now, and maybe it is. But while we wait for some breakthrough or scientific discovery, we've got to stay grounded, mentally, physically, emotionally. It's the only way we'll survive this. And maybe, just maybe, the solution isn't one big moment of discovery. Maybe it's 1,000 small steps. Maybe it's each one of us doing our part to try and make sense of this, to help each other, to keep pushing forward in the face of uncertainty. We don't know how this will end, but we do know one thing. We won't make it through if we don't keep fighting for answers. Even if those answers aren't coming fast enough, that's where the real power is. The will to keep going. The will to keep searching for answers, even when it feels like everything's falling apart. Okay, we've talked about a lot of things. The chaos, the fear, the psychological toll, and what the scientists are saying. Now, let's get real about something we all need to be thinking about right now. Survival. Not just surviving for a few days or weeks, but for the long haul. This could be our reality for months, maybe even longer. I know it's hard to think about anything beyond the next hour, especially when everything is floating around and you're just trying to hold on. But the truth is, if we're going to make it through this, we need to start thinking in the long term. We need to figure out how to live in this gravityless world, how to build from what we have, and how to rebuild what we've lost. It's not just about keeping your head above water anymore, literally and figuratively. It's about finding ways to stay grounded in a world that refuses to stay still. That's what we've got to focus on now, establishing a foundation for survival, even if that foundation doesn't look anything like what we're used to. First, let's talk about food. Water's probably the biggest concern right now, but food's a close second. You might think it's impossible to grow anything without gravity, but people are figuring it out. There's a group of survivors in Mexico. Don't ask me how they're doing it, but they've set up a small vertical farming system. Yeah, vertical farming, because gravity's not doing its job. They're using what little light they can gather from the sun and growing crops in containers suspended from ropes. It's working. It's not a whole lot of food, but it's enough to keep them going. They've found ways to collect rainwater, using old tarps and sheets, stuff that would have been useless before. They've learned to use gravity's absence to their advantage. They're making do with what they've got. And that's the key right now. But it's not just about food and water. It's about shelter. People are trying to build shelters that can withstand the chaos. In parts of Europe, people are using buildings that were already abandoned, making them livable again. They're patching up holes, securing things that float with heavy objects, anything that can help stabilize the structure. If you're in a place where buildings are still standing, don't assume they're safe. You need to check them out, make sure they're secure, and reinforce them. Otherwise, you might be looking at a collapse, and you don't want to be caught in the middle of that. But shelter's only part of it. What about long-term survival? How do you keep your community together when everything is up in the air? This is where the small groups we've been hearing about come in. The key to making it through this is collaboration. You can't do this alone. Nobody can. Start by finding people who are willing to work together, whether you're just starting with a few people or you're part of a larger group. Create a system. Organize food, water, shelter, safety. You need to know who's doing what and where people are going. Share knowledge, share resources, and don't forget, communication is crucial. Even though it feels like we've lost contact with the outside world, there are still the ways to reach out. Use the radios, use the old networks. Find any means you can to stay in touch with others. That leads me to another thing, technology. Yes, we've lost power, and yes, we're all floating around like fish out of water. But there's still a ton of tech we can use, even without gravity. We're talking about solar panels, hand-crank devices, satellite phones. It's not much, but it's enough to make sure you can stay connected, keep your communication lines open, and stay up to date on any developments that might be happening. It's not just about survival, it's about staying informed. And let's not forget about medical needs. With the world as it is now, it's hard to get the help you need when you need it. Hospitals are in chaos. They're not functioning the way they should. But there are ways to help yourself. If you're a nurse, a doctor, or just someone who knows how to patch people up, this is your time. People need help with injuries. Simple cuts and bruises might turn into infections because of the lack of gravity. People need help with mental health too. If you're qualified to do so, offer your skills. Organize a little clinic, even if it's just in a garage or under a tarp. It could save lives. But don't forget this. Staying alive is one thing, but staying healthy is another. In this strange new world, we need to make sure we're not just existing. We need to thrive. That means focusing on mental health, keeping people occupied, giving them purpose. If you're stuck in a shelter just floating around with no clear plan, the mental strain will start to take its toll. Create routines, find things to do. Get everyone involved. Even the smallest task can help keep the mind focused. Now, I know this all sounds overwhelming. I know you might be thinking, how can we possibly make this work? But That's the thing. Survival is never easy. It's never something that comes easily or quickly. But when you're fighting for something, when you're fighting for your life and the lives of others, you find a way. That's what people are doing out there right now. They're finding a way. So, let me leave you with this. Focus on the small victories. Every little step forward is a victory. Every time you find food, every time you reinforce your shelter, every time you make a connection with someone else who's out there fighting too, that's progress. It's not just about surviving today, it's about surviving for the long haul. It's about creating something stable in a world that refuses to stay still. And if we keep moving forward, we just might make it. Here we are, you and I. We've been through a lot together, haven't we? From the first moment gravity disappeared, to the chaos, the struggle, the hope, and everything in between. And now, here we are. The world has changed, and we're still standing. But standing isn't enough, is it? We have to keep moving forward. We have to keep fighting. As I'm sitting here talking to you, if you're still out there listening, I can't help but reflect on everything we've been through. Everything that's happened, what we've lost, what we've gained, and what still lies ahead. It's impossible to deny the gravity of the situation. But there's something else, something just as powerful. Our will to survive. That's what I'm seeing in the faces of the survivors, in the voices of those who are still fighting. It's not just about what we've lost. It's about what we're willing to rebuild. I know. Right now, it feels like we're stuck. Like we're waiting for the world to return to normal. Waiting for gravity to come back. Or for someone to come and fix everything. But that's not going to happen. The world we knew, the world with its order and structure, it's gone. And maybe, just maybe, that's a blessing in disguise. Think about it for a second. For all the chaos, for all the fear, this world, this floating world, offers us something new, something different. It's a chance to rebuild, to rethink everything we thought we knew. What kind of world do we want to create now that the old one is gone? What kind of communities do we want to form? We have an opportunity here, a rare, fleeting opportunity to start fresh. I don't know what will happen next. I don't know if gravity will return or if we'll find a way to restore balance. But here's the thing. We can't wait for it. We have to take control of our own fate now. We have to start looking inward and asking ourselves, what do we need to do right now to ensure our survival? And what kind of future do we want to build? It's not going to be easy. It won't be quick. But if we've learned anything from all this, it's that we're capable of more than we think. When everything around us is floating, when nothing is rooted in the earth, it's easy to feel lost. But we're not lost, not if we stick together, not if we keep pushing forward. I've heard stories that give me hope. A father in Minnesota holding on to his children with nothing but his arms, his love, and a little bit of strength. A group of elderly people in Ireland creating their own little community where they share what they have and care for each other. A young girl in Japan helping her neighbors rebuild their homes, using nothing but the tools she found and the courage she had left. And those stories, they're just a few. Just a small fraction of the millions of people out there who are still fighting, still pushing, still surviving. We are capable of more than we realize, and the world we're building now, it's ours. It's our chance to make something new, something better. We may be floating now, but that doesn't mean we can't find our way. We may be without gravity, but we still have the strength to keep moving forward. We still have the heart to keep trying. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. I don't know what tomorrow holds. I don't know if gravity will return, or if we'll find a new way to survive. But here's the thing, we're still here, and as long as we're still here, there's still hope. There's still a chance for something new to rise from the ashes of the old world. So if you're still with me, if you're still listening, keep going, keep fighting, keep surviving. The world may have stopped, but that doesn't mean we have to. We're not just surviving, we're living. And as long as we keep moving, as long as we keep fighting for each other, we'll find our way. Stay strong, stay connected, and remember, gravity may have disappeared, but hope is still here. As we wrap up today's broadcast, I want to leave you with this thought. Despite the darkness we face, despite everything we've lost, there's still hope. We're still here. And as long as we keep moving forward, keep building, keep remembering each other, we're not truly lost. No matter what the world looks like around us, there's always something worth fighting for, always something worth remembering. So let's keep going, together. Even when things feel uncertain, remember, you're not alone. We're all in this together. We might not have the past, but we have today. And that's enough to make tomorrow worth living for. Thank you for joining me today. If you've enjoyed this broadcast, if it helped you feel connected, or maybe just a little less alone, please do me a favor. Like this video, share it with others, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Your support means everything to us, and if you want to hear more of these daily broadcasts, you can also support us by clicking the join button on our channel. Every bit of your support helps us keep going, keep sharing, and keep telling the stories that matter. Until next time, keep safe, keep strong, and remember, even in the silence, we are still here. You're still here, and that's all we need to keep moving forward. See you soon.